There are tons of amazing locks out there to pick. And when you're first starting into lock picking, it can sometimes be a chore trying to find the right lock for you. Thankfully, we've got the LPU Belts website that was created to kind of rank locks in order of difficulty level by using the karate belt system. White belt being easy, all the way up to black belt being some of the most difficult locks you may ever pick. When you are trying to choose a lock, it's kind of a really great reference point to be able to go onto the LPU belts and see where you're at according to what locks you've picked, see what level they're ranked, and then either choose something in that same level or maybe something a level higher if you want to challenge yourself. But anyways, it's a great resource, and I'm going to leave a link to it in the description. It's just lpubelts.com. You can remember that. I did make another video about if you want to check it out. It's a tour of the LPU Belts website, and it shows you all the cool things that you can do in that website, and it's a whole other video in and of itself, so you got to go check this other video because I can't go over it right now in this video. But I do want to talk about the fact that even though some of these locks are on the belt list, and some of them are quite frankly just real a-holes, and I don't recommend them for newer pickers until you are a little bit more experienced in picking, and then you can actually kind of see what's going on with these locks, and we'll get into all that. So grab a pen and paper or bookmark this video. Also, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up. It's free, all right? Don't be a monster. Hit the like. I'll wait. I don't think you hit it. That's why we're still sitting here. Whatever. So when it comes to actually belt ranking locks, what happens is quite a few black belt level pickers pick these locks, and then they decide to let everybody else know about what difficulty level they think they should fall under. Once a few black belts agree on a certain level, then that's the level that they become ranked at. But if the person who is ranking them doesn't get a nightmare version of this lock, it might end up ranked at a place where you might need to know a little more about picking before you can actually tackle this specific lock. It happens, all right? So I want to talk about a few of those locks right now, and I really think that if you're newer, you probably ought to steer clear of some of these until you kind of learn a bit more. So the first one that I truly find the most annoying, and it's my personal nemesis, is the American 1100, or any of the American locks. Okay, the American locks, they're milestone locks in Locksport, and I think it's just all about, popularity. They're not the greatest lock. Let's just be real. There's quite a few things that are annoying about this lock, but mostly it's just that you might happen to get one that has really squished springs, and you don't know that they're squished unless you go check. And to go check, you've got to gut it. And to gut it, sometimes when people first approach picking this lock, they're not to the point where they are comfortably able to gut a lock yet. It makes it really hard for people to check this. But yeah, it just depends on, I think, where you get the lock, where they're stored, how old they are. I don't know. It really mutes the feedback so bad that if you happen to get one with squished springs, you have a really hard time picking it. And you might think that you just aren't a good picker, right? Because it's just not opening, and everybody else is getting theirs open, and this guy got his in a day, he got his in a week, I've been here for a month and I still can't get mine open. And so it can be very taxing on your emotions, let's be real. And I know most of you are guys, but we can be honest here. It's just me and you. And I'll tell you, it can be very taxing on your emotions. You feel like you suck at picking. You feel like everybody else is able to pick theirs. It's a milestone lock. Everybody picks these. Why can't I? Right? That's how you feel. The problem is, it just could be the lock. You could just have a really shitty one. And so again, I always stress, especially with beginner locks, get 2 of them, get a couple of them, because one might just be a real a-hole. But I do have to say that the 1100 also has some really good qualities in the fact that it does have a lot of different challenges that you need to overcome in order to pick it. And so picking this one will teach you quite a few things, but if you get one that springs are squished, it might just never open. It just might never open. So again, get a couple. All right, next on the list is the Bergvokter, the Diamond, the Gamma 700. These are pretty crazy locks because either they can be very, very easy. For example, I have a Bergvokter 700 that I picked in 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Or they can be very, very extremely difficult. I borrowed the same Bergwachter Gamma 700 from a friend and tried to pick theirs, and I couldn't open it at all. With the Gamma 700 also, there are two types of pinning on that lock. Lockchuck decided to decimate two of these to kind of look inside, and he found one with some crazy spool pins, crazy spool pin looking key pins, and the other one had tapered pins in it. So it can be a very broad spectrum on this lock as to, is it going to be easy or is it going to be very, very difficult or impossible to pick. So that's another one to keep an eye out for. The Ace brass body padlock, I think it's the 40mm one. I actually picked a couple of these when I was first starting into picking, and I videoed it, never had a problem. Thought it was a really cool little lock, really great for beginners. And then I bought one for a video about a month ago, and that thing was almost impossible to pick. I have no idea why, because it's non-guttable. I don't know what made it so difficult, but it's really, really difficult to pick. And I borrowed one from Lockchuck, was able to pick it, no problem. So just be careful if you buy an Ace brass body padlock. If you find yourself struggling really, really hard with it, just get a different one or pick something else. The Avis 64 Ti series. This lock has aluminum pins inside of it. We don't normally deal with aluminum pins. So when you're picking this lock, these pins feel really, really different. They give completely different feedback from any other lock other than the other 64s. And you can mangle these pins very, very easily just by picking them, tensioning them, anything. It can really mangle these pins up. And so that makes it even harder to pick. And so I don't recommend that one at all. Just keep in mind that none of the other locks you're going to pick have aluminum pins. And so it's kind of one that's not really going to teach you much when it comes to any other kind of lock. So yeah, you might have trouble picking one of these if you get one. Don't think it's you if you're having a problem, because this is a crazy ass lock and it sucks to pick. The Yale 500 Plus, I found that I had to end up float picking mine in order to get it to open. Now, it's ranked a greenbelt lock, and so any greenbelt picker isn't really going to be familiar with the technique of float picking. And so if they happen to get a lock just like mine, they are going to be stuck unless they figure out how to float pick. And if you aren't familiar with any of those techniques, you wouldn't even know what to look out for to even know that you have to float pick this one. And so, yeah, it can be a tough one. You know, it can be a tough one. If you do have a Yale 500 Plus you're having trouble with, I'll leave a link to Marston's video about the Yale 500 Plus. He explains it really well, his technique and how he ended up getting his open. It might help you out. Most really well-made locks have balanced pin stacks, which means that if the key pins are different lengths, then the drivers are all different lengths as well. And that makes it so that the bottom of the key pin to the top of the driver is the same exact length going throughout the entire lock. Balanced pin stacks prevents comb picking, so you can't push all the pins up past the shear line and open the lock. Unbalanced pin stacks just mean that the key pins are different lengths where the driver pins stay the same size. The Avis and Master locks have unbalanced pin stacks. That's why some of these can be bypassed with comb picks. Normally they're pretty nice to pick and you don't have any issues. However, if you do have a very teeny tiny key pin on that lock, then that means that the driver pin can actually drop down into the chamber and be below the shear line when you start to pick the lock. So when you tension the lock, you're actually tensioning it on a spring. This is why some people get mangled springs in some of the locks that they're picking. This is why people have issues with, the pins not wanting to move no matter how hard they push and things like that. These are all issues that I did talk about in another video. I'll leave a link to that video here. If you do have one that you're having a hard time lifting a pin, check this video out. These locks are all fun to pick. You might have all of these locks and have none of these problems. I'm just saying that every once in a while you run into an a-hole of a lock. The only one I would recommend to completely steer clear of is the 64 Ti's because they are terrible. And until you get a little bit better at picking, picking those might be really, really treacherous for you. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. Please don't forget to hit the like. And again, please check out this video on the Mashlock 570 or 575, whichever one it is. It does talk about the unbalanced pin stacks, and you need to know this info if you're going to be picking Master Locks or Abyss. All right, I will see you guys on the next one. Subscribe.